Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week we watched the long-awaited Justice League and Justice League Snyder Cut.
I thought you were just going to say the long... And
I
you know
what?
That was going to be just like describing the film.
Justice League Snyder Cut.
What a fucking endeavor! I should not have left this for Monday and Tuesday before we record the podcast on Wednesday. Spoiler alert: this is how this happens, everybody. And then I had to spend like a couple hours usually I try to do my notes the day before, but like there were just too many notes because the first movie is 2 hours, and the second movie is 4 fucking hours.
Yeah. 4-hour movie, 2-hour movie, two completely different vibes. We're on the pulse of culture, just as a heads up to the viewership. Snyder Cut just came out. I'm sure some of you probably watched it, so you're excited to hear what we have to say about it.
There will be lots of spoilers. So
there will be lots of spoilers, yeah. Because you value our opinion because we are... famous? I don't know. What was I going to say? I was going to say, I just watched a video on, because you all have parasocial relationships with us. Ooh, because we're in your ear all the time. Do you know that?
What does parasocial mean? No, tell me.
It's like when you like see somebody's stuff so regularly on social media, but you've never met them and you don't know them. You know they exist, but they don't know you exist. So it's like this parasocial relationship where you think
I have a lot of those.
You think that you're in their life to some degree, but they literally don't know you exist. So we're that to somebody, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe.
Either way.
So we decided that we were going to do this movie because, one, there's 2 hours of extra content. So you're like, how the fuck? So, I mean, theoretically, like we would have seen 2 hours of the movie already, and then they would have added 2 more hours to make that cute little thing. But what was so interesting is they are completely different films, and they could not feel more different in terms of like also even some of like the scenes didn't play out the same way, and like they used alternate cuts or like alternate so a lot of what we talk about on this podcast, as you know, because you're regular listeners and we love you, is choice. Like there's choice when you decide to do something or remake something, or so like seeing that there are multiple versions of these scenes and how they go, like I know that's a thing that happens, but seeing how different that can be, and then how different that can be depending on the music and the editing and the lighting and the backstories, and I'm fucking blown away. I went into this thinking I was gonna fucking hate it, and I'm so excited to talk.
Well, because I felt the same way. I didn't, because obviously, like, again, everything's a choice, and in post, like, as they say, the editor's like the third author or whatever. But truly, like you said, there are certain scenes that, like, yeah, I already saw this scene, but then something else happens, and you're like, wait, what? That wasn't it. That's not how it went. So it changes the entire context. Like for me, I kept thinking of that word as like the context of these characters, the context of a scene. Like in the first one, there's a very particular scene that in my head and in my notes, I wrote terrible acting, terrible directing. This is a poorly written scene. This is a bad scene. This is not good. This doesn't work. The exact same scene, beat for beat, line for line, is in the next one, but given the context of the last 30 minutes surrounding this character, I'm like, this scene's amazing. I love this scene. It's literally acted exactly the same.
Or even the music, right?
Or even the music, yeah.
Because it takes it from like over the top or like hilarious, like, supposed to be funny, to like actually giving it the weight that it deserves. Like it changed the whole tone of that scene, and I was just like, ooh. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it was the same scene, same dialogue.
Yeah.
Same cuts. I mean, the visual was a little bit different because of just color and everything, but like overall, it's the exact same scene, and I have completely different takes of it because of the context. Because there is more information that I have given the circumstance, and then it's like it validates what's happening in the scene, whereas before it didn't have that information.
And I think it's just this is a really good textbook example of of everything that we talk about on this podcast, where it's like, you know, choices and choices matter. Just like there are all of these choices and all of these things that go towards like how you are supposed to feel in this moment and how they're guiding the filmmakers and everybody involved are guiding you to have the reaction that they want you to have. And you like, there is literally, I can't think of a better film to show that as clearly as these two films.
Yeah, I mean, same. I guess, again, I was not excited to watch this. I have no stake. And I mean, granted, this isn't like a Marvel DC thing. I couldn't give less of a shit about the Marvel Universe either, generally, as just a viewer. Do I like most of their stuff? Absolutely. Did I love WandaVision? 100%. I'm here for a lot of it. However, if it were to be like, well, that's just not happening, it'd be like, okay, that's fine. Let's do something else. Like, I didn't really read the comics. I'm not like invested in either. But from the DC movies I've seen, I was so not excited to watch these because generally they're not good.
Same.
And so just going into this, at least with the second one, I was pleasantly surprised with the outcome and how I felt in general about it.
I actually felt like, okay, I hate Ben Affleck as Batman. I just want to throw that out there.
Same.
There's a lot of things like you were saying that I don't like about the DC cinematic universe and what they've done, or like, you know, to me it just feels cheap and boring and kind of like there's no substance. But this,
uninspired.
But like the Snyder Cut actually made me have interest, which is more than anything. Like, and I liked the original Wonder Woman because I saw it at a perfect time in my life, you know. So I was like, oh, cool. I'm sure if I go back and look at it through a feminist lens, the whole thing, but this felt different in a lot of ways.
I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, really, I'm excited to talk about the second one. This first one,
we're just gonna shit on this first one. Should we just do it? Let's get it out of the way.
Let's go burn it. 2 years after Superman's death, Bruce Wayne Batman heeds a warning symbol about the coming apocalypse that is to be instigated by big baddie Steppenwolf, who, millennia earlier, had failed in his first attempt at destroying the world. Here we go. As Batman begins assembling his team, the Mother Boxes, big scary GameCubes that harness the power of the universe, begin screaming for attention, and Steppenwolf comes a-calling. If he can get all three Mother Boxes and merge them into the Unity, the Earth will be terraformed into his home planet and thereby destroyed. Batman clunkily assembles Aquaman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Cyborg, but oh no, Steppenwolf has got a couple of the boxes and they're running out of time. Did somebody say reanimate Superman's corpse?
So they reanimate Superman's corpse with the last Mother Box and a big old jolt of Flash's lightning. But wait, Superman doesn't remember who he is and starts lasering the Justice League. JK, Lois Lane is here, and now they fly off to a farm. For the grand finale, the Justice League finds Steppenwolf's big bad lair in Radiation City, Russia, and fight the big bad guy. And they're about to lose? Maybe? Just kidding. Superman shows up, and all is right in the world. Thank you, Justice League.
Thank you, Justice League. Yeah. I'm really happy I didn't see this movie in theaters.
I did, and I only did because one of our friends, Toonie, hi Toonie, I love you, wanted to go see this movie, and we're like, okay, we haven't been in the movie in a minute, whatever, and I was just like, oh my god, this movie. Oh my god. But yeah, it was a mess.
I mean, to be fair, addressing the general, like, I mean, I don't want to give Joss Whedon credit because fuck Joss Whedon, but he did step in last minute because Snyder did have to leave, right, with his daughter, sudden death. So there is a level of, like, just put together whatever and, like, throw it out. But, like, honestly, this movie is clunky. It is a clunky clunkster dumpster. It is the clunkiest Tinker Toy. It's so bad. Like, every scene... Like, the opening scene of him fighting that bad guy, and then he's like, this is a symbol. I need to assemble. And you're like, really? This is the threshold being crossed. This is the call to adventure, is the bug's blood on the wall. And you just say, like, I'm going to go north. And it's like, just go there. What is this scene? This scene means nothing. Just go to him. Like, well,
and there's like this giant, like, fucking 10 minutes of Superman is dead and everybody is so sad and this and like, and I was just like, fine, like, sure, but I wasn't like emotionally invested. Like, you're supposed to be emotionally invested with that awful, like, cell phone video of like,
yes,
hey kid, you could be whatever. And like the premise of the whole world is like lost and doesn't have a hero and can't find its way because Superman is gone, I felt was the silliest plotline because like there are other heroes. There's other like I was also fucking brought out by both of these movies because like so Wonder Woman 1977 or 77 whatever it's called came out and everybody knows Diana Prince. Everybody knows Wonder Woman because they heard her in their fucking head when they had to like, you know, rescind their wishes and shit like that. But supposedly nobody knows her and like so I'm just like, wait, so we're crying because Superman is dead, but you have an Amazonian, you have like, you know, all of these other heroes, other people that are in the world. Like, well, the whole thing was just bad.
That was also one of the biggest things, I think, initially, especially for, like, me. I did not finish the new Wonder Woman. I didn't see the first one. I've seen very few DC movies, generally, and I know almost nothing about the backstory. So going into it, I knew that there's going to be stuff that I don't know. And that I'm not going to be like, oh, I don't know that, so that's a problem. No. Again, context, backstory. I know that they're not going to go over Wonder Woman's backstory or Batman's backstory or Aquaman because they have their own movies and they're assuming that you've seen them. And you know what I mean? So with that in mind, if, like you're saying, there is stuff that's already happened, but then we're forgetting that and sort of negating it and moving forward and being like, remember this, don't remember that because this is a new thing and we're pretending this is the other thing didn't happen. In my head, making this movie, I was like, the only one in this series who doesn't have a backstory is Cyborg. So in my head, I'm like, spend 40 minutes on Cyborg. Give us his story, develop his character. This will be his sort of origin story within Justice League. Because we know the other ones. Tell us this person's story. Get to the finale, cool, and then he can have a spinoff, whatever. But they didn't do that. They ignored his character completely. They had like 2 scenes where he is mad at his dad for an accident. What accident? I don't know. And then we just move past it and he's like, I'm a monster. And she's like, no, you can help us. And he's like, fuck you. And like flies away. And you're like, I still don't know who you are. Like, you're mad at your dad. Okay, he brought you back to life, but okay, so there's a car accident. Cool. But what? Like, I don't. Where's the baggage? Where's the anguish? Where's the tension? Like, you're having these dramatic scenes, but there's literally no setup for tension. So it's 2 people saying words at each other that mean nothing. And now he's like, I'm ready to be a hero. And we're like, who are you? Who are you?
And he's like the most interesting character out of all of them in this movie, even though he's only in it for like 10 minutes and like 5 of that he's like in the background for, right? He has some of the best dialogue. He's like, you know, when he's talking to his dad in that like 2-minute scene, which the next film did very well, right? He like, you know, his dad is trying to say like, hey, I saved you. And he's like, no, you lost me. I'm different. I'm modified. I have a language that I don't understand. Like, you said monster, and did you mean me? Because you are the one that like did this without my consent, without all of this. And I was just like, I need more of this. I need more Cyborg.
And also the movie is literally set up to center him. Like, Cyborg knows everything. He can hack it. He's the only one who can access the mother cubes.
But we don't really know that because they don't talk about it.
Because they don't talk about it or tell us until the end when he tries to do it. And it's like, oh, he's obviously the center of this movie. But he's had like 2 minutes of screen time.
But
and now we're here to believe that he's like the center. But instead it's
Batman's Justice League. This whole movie is fucking Batman being sad and being like, well, I can't do anything. So, and like we will get into Batman and why he's a boring character, which I used to love growing up because of the animated series, and I recognize that. But like looking at him objectively, I'm like, man, like, and everything else after that, he's just so boring. But like, like he's just like, I need to do this, like, and this whole movie just feels like an action buddy cop kind of like funny but not funny. Like they wanted to be like Thor Ragnarok, but they also wanted to be like Infinity War, and it's all about Batman. It's all about Batman, and like it's not good. It's not about the team.
It was just frustrating because, like you said, buddy cop. They tried to make it like buddy cop romance between Wonder Woman and Batman, and like that was sort of like the thing. They're like, "Oh, are we good enough? We don't know," and blah blah blah. And it's like
Flash
centered around
is a
Batman.
side character.
Yeah, and it's just, I want to say on record, I do think that Ben Affleck as Batman is the most boring Batman. He's not a character. He's not Bruce Wayne. He's Ben Affleck in a fucking leather jacket and then doing a joke voice. You know how people used to be like, "Oh, I'm Batman." Like that was the joke. He's doing the joke voice whenever he's in the bat suit. And you're like, "Man, this is really boring. Like there's no choices being made. You're just being Ben Affleck with money, which is Ben Affleck. Like you're just some rich white actor." Like, and that's
my
it.
superpower is I'm rich. And I was just like,
see,
damn.
I like that that was one line that I noted. I was like, that's fun. I like this because it's true. His superpower is privilege and wealth. That's it. And in a capitalist society, kind of is a superpower. Like,
and I like that basically in both movies, if you look at what Batman does, it's bad. He's bad at getting people together. He's bad at fighting. Like, you know, you see...
He's the worst.
You see Wonder Woman kick so much ass. You see everybody kick so much ass, and he's like, "Oh, I'm bleeding." Like, there's a point... Like, he just keeps, like, even the Flash, who, like, you know, gets hurt, he still, like, manages to, like, do his thing even though he's hurt, and Batman's like, "Oh, I can't do anything without my gadgets," or "Oh, I'm bleeding." And then, like, going on the rich part too, like, they try to, like, redeem him at the end because he saves Superman's mom's farm, right? And he's like, "Oh, I bought the bank." And then I was just thinking, why couldn't you fucking help her to begin with? What the fuck? You're like pissing yourself, like you're being such an asshole, and you're just like, "Ugh, my friend died," but you're not trying to reach out and to help anybody that he fucking cared about. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, this is one of my biggest because that scene and that line is in both of them very clearly and eloquently, and it's one of the things that like bothers me the most about this is like his superpower is wealth, is money. He's rich. That's the whole point. He says it very clearly. It's supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. Ha, ha, ha. We get it. So your good thing that you did for us to be, like, super stoked on is, like, you just bought Superman's farm? Like, that's it? Like, you're literally a billionaire, trillionaire almost. Like, because I feel like, again, in a lot of these universes, or in a lot of these, like, comics and these stories, the superhero has a power that is, like, directly tied to who they are intrinsically, and, like, the goodness of them is using that for good, and that's the whole base of it. But Batman doesn't use his wealth for good. He just plays cop on the streets and then goes home and then does nothing with his money except buy more shit for himself to play cop. And I'm like, well, that's not good. You're just a shitty vigilante who gets beat up and has to get saved by other people. And the only reason you can do that is because you're rich. You idiot.
Like, a lot of the time, these villains are they're like real people that, like, you know, that are victims of the system and of, like, wealth inequality and stuff like that. So all of these billions of dollars that he does, like, doing things like, you know, playing cop and buying all this technology and doing all of that, if he reinvested into his community and if he actually fucking gave a shit, you know, he has all these, like, balls where it's like, you know, he's playboy and he gets the attention. So, like, he can't do that because he has to be centered in it, right? So he has to be centered in any sort of charity that there's like how many fucking Wayne charities, right? And then as Batman, he's also centering himself as the person that's saving, like, you know, and like, just he as a character is fucking gross.
I don't like Batman as a character in general. In this one, I like him even less because he's boring. Like, at least if you're going to be a pretend cop, be fucking like, as a character, be fun or interesting, or like make a choice. Like, I mean, arguably also Christian Bale, the same thing. Batman as a whole is shitty. But again, I don't, and this is coming from a cinematic perspective. I've only seen the versions of Batman through film. I have not read any of the Batman comics. But that being said, with the origin story, with who Bruce Wayne is as a person, all that stuff, he is a pretend cop. That's all he does. And he just has wealth, and he fucking sucks. And it's so boring. And I hate that this movie centered the narrative around him and spent so much time. They wasted so much time on his fucking face. Like, if him just sitting there thinking about something, I'm like, you have 2 hours to squeeze in so much information. why are we talking to Batman? Like, move on. Go somewhere else. Show us something else.
And most of the time, we just see him being either treating people like objects, right? The dude that he uses in the beginning, right at the beginning, as bait to lure this guy out, right? Or the monsters out. Tracking people, even his friends, and doing all this stuff, like, you know, trying to control all of that. But then he's such a fucking asshole to his friends. So, like, when he looks at, when Diana isn't doing what he wants her to do and isn't reacting how he wants her to react, he says, "Did Steve Trevor tell you that?" And she's like, "Yo, you need to stop. This is not okay." And he's like, "Superman was a beacon to the world. Why aren't you? Why don't I know about you? You shut yourself down for a century, so don't tell me to fucking move on." So he, like, goes for the low blow, like the lowest of the low blows.
That's literally coming from somebody who disappears for decades.
Yes.
Like, that's Batman's MO generally in every movie and almost anything I've ever read about him. It's like he goes and saves the day, but then he disappears, and that's why there's a bat signal, because it's like, Batman, we need you. Where are you? You're nowhere to be found. We can't find you. You've disappeared. Like, shut the fuck up, Ben Affleck. Shut up.
And then I love in that same scene, though, that like Cyborg and Flash had her back. Like, Cyborg is like, "Look, while you were being an asshole," and then the Flash is like, "Look, if she kills you, we're gonna cover for her, just so you know." So I was like, cool, okay. Like, I like that those things were in there, because he is a fucking asshole to everybody.
Sucks. Batman fucking sucks. He's so bogus. The whole he's so annoying. I'm like way more vested in, I mean, fucking Aquaman or Cyborg or Flash. I mean, at least they're interesting people, and like.
But then after the whole fucking movie happens, one of the things that Wonder Woman says to Batman to get him to, like, be like the person he needs to be or whatever, is she tells him that he was right about her, about that whole conversation, and that, you know, she's been a coward, but she can't tell people when they need to die, and he needs to, you know, be the person. He needs to man up, essentially. And I was like, you just validated what he said and what he did and how he went about that, and like in this really condescending way to yourself, you know, like, what fucking power do you have? The whole time, Diana, I have like practically no notes for her, because all she was doing is, like, one, there was so many ass shots, and every fucking scene in this, like, her cleavage was like out, like, it was like just plunging, or like she was shot from a very male gaze in this film, and like, she's just there to tell men. She kind of like functions as like a conscience to them, like, hey, remember the human element, because like they're incapable of getting along with each other because they don't talk about their feelings, or they don't talk about stuff. And I'm just like, cool. So she's part of the team and she holds them all together because she's a woman and she talks about feelings. Okay. Then, like, you know, furthering that, like, you know, objectification of her, right? Aquaman, this is supposed to be a funny beat, but he's like sitting on her lasso, right? Her lasso of truth. Yeah. And he's like, look, we're going to die, but it's honorable, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, like, fine, cool. And then he's like, also, you're hot, Diana. And like, there's like a point, I think the only person that doesn't show any romantic interest in her, or doesn't like say that they want to fuck her, or that they, like, you know, want to get with her, is Cyborg, which, again, the most interesting person in this, right? But of course, everybody has to, like, you know, most of the people in the team have to want to fuck the one woman on the team, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind
Without
of like,
doubt.
oh, well, we respect her because this, like, because we don't see that, like, she has like a moment or two of like ass kicking in this, but like, I mean, nothing like the next film, which I am excited to get into.
100%, because even that bank scene, like, comparing the two, in the first one, it's almost like, did she save the day? Like, it's edited in a very weird way where, like, the bomb kind of goes off, but it's like, wait, was that her? Like, what they make sure to show her, like, blocking the bullets and everything, but then it's like, that's kind of it. You know what I mean? Like, there's very little, but then they get way more into it in the second one, just as far as, like, how good she actually is as a hero in general, and how good she is at fighting, more specifically. This is also a big critique of, like, hero movies. Like, they're so cishet and, like, toxic more often than not. Like you said, like, every male character has to sleep with her. because she's the only woman and she's got cleavage all the time. And again, that also goes to like wardrobe. Like she's wearing a literal mini skirt and like a bralette, like, and a headband. I mean, like,
well, and that's another thing for the whole Amazons, right? Like in Wonder Woman, like in the first film, their skirts were not that short, and in this one, they definitely shortened them up. They made them from a much more male gaze, of course, but like like and that was something I remember seeing a lot of headlines when Justice League originally came out in 2017. It was just like, they shortened the skirts. Why did they have to do that? You already had the fucking costumes. Like, so this is just even more budget, and there's way more Amazons that you're showing in this, like, you know, supposedly. So like, why would you change any of that? Like, in like the Wonder Woman, like the first one, I cried in the first like 10 minutes because like you see all of these fucking powerful women that are just like crushing things and just like, you know, with their abs and they're going and they're like doing this like this incredible fighting work, right? And then in this one, they are just the most pushovers. Like, they are not good, and they are arguably like the weakest people in the whole film. And I was like, this is horrible.
Well, what's so strange, and again, this leads to what we were saying at the beginning about the context of a scene and the way that it's edited. The scene when the mother box is starting to shake, and then those like the fly people come down. I forget their names, but when they show up and it's like the big fight. In the first one, they look so fucking weak and bad as like warriors, and they're like just get blown away, and then she's like running in slow-mo and slides under the door, and it's like that whole bit. In the second one, it's like a full scene. They're like standing their ground in the room, fucking knocking them back, constantly standing their ground until it's like, fuck, we have to go. Then they go, and then it's this whole scene of them going, because I love like the horseback thing with the rope, and then they're constantly throwing the box and like running. That whole sequence, gorgeous. And I know it's in the first one, but it's way better in the second one. But again, in the first one, it's portrayed as if like, oh, this man's so powerful, we have no chance. But in the second one, it's like, well, no, they have a very good chance. They arguably, and in the lore, almost single-handedly stopped it the first time.
If all of the Legion was there protecting the box at that time, which, you know, the second one they get into, they're like, you know, go alert the troops or alert the Legion, let's do this. And they fucking hold their own for a long-ass time, right? So, like, theoretically, and there's so much more to that just adds so much more context where it's like, yes, okay, I can believe this. But in this one, Steppenwolf already knows where all three boxes are right away, basically, or the first two boxes, right? So he, like, goes to the Amazons and he's like, yo, and we don't even know why they woke up or anything. Like, there's no context. So, like, throughout this movie, and so, because I haven't watched a lot of DC stuff, I've basically only watched Wonder Woman in this, right? So it's like, I'm like, am I missing stuff? Is there, like, you know, trying to, like, I'm giving it more credit in certain spots because I'm like, I don't fucking know. But there's like so much like vital information that in the Snyder cut that you get, and you're like, oh, this makes so much sense. So like, a Steppenwolf just comes up and is like, yoink, to like the Amazons and the Atlanteans like it was nothing. And I was like, why the fuck didn't you come back and get this earlier? Like, this is so boring.
There's like as a character, because again, Steppenwolf is a character. We need to understand motive. We need to know why he's doing it. Our justification is he tried to do it a couple thousand years ago. It didn't work. He's back to make it happen. Peace out. He knows where these boxes are, as at least the story is edited to make it look like he just shows up and gets it. He shows up and gets it. And at this point, the Justice is like, fuck. If he gets the third one, he loses. Final sequence. They win. It's over. And it's like, but why? Why is he doing? And then obviously in the second one, like, he's having to talk to his bad bosses who are like, you need to prove yourself. And he's like, no, but I'm a baby, but help me. And they're like, no, you need to do this now. And he's like, fuck, okay, I'll be a big, strong man and go do it. So there's motive. Like, he's having to answer to some other people, and that's why he's doing it. And the boxes are way harder to find. He's really struggling in trying to locate where these are at, and really struggling every time he comes up against, say, the Atlanteans or the Amazons. It's a much harder fight for him, which, I mean, in a good movie, it should be. And in the first one, it all happens so quick, and it's just, it implies that nothing really happened. Like, the stakes were so low in the first one that by the time the resolve turns and the day is good again and Superman's back to being Superman and alive, it's kind of like, oh, I guess it's done, huh?
It was the pacing of this movie, like the way that they spent so much time on on Batman, on like we're sad because Superman's gone. That was probably like between those two things, that was at least a half hour of the movie. And then they spent another 10 minutes on this like one family that was living in Radiation City that we didn't need.
Which who the fuck were they? I mean, granted they weren't in the second one, but who the fuck was that and why was that?
And like they tried to do like so many more jokes and try like they like some of the choices that were made I just don't understand because there's so much content there and so much good content too. Like, okay, look, like I know that Joss stepped in because accentuating circumstances, absolutely 100% like, but fucking push back the movie date if something that big happens. Like, this was like Justice League was a pile of steaming shit. Like, it was one of the worst movies that I have ever fucking seen. And it was that because there was literally no information. This reminded me of like the Cliff Notes version, like a bad Cliff Notes version of a book that you find on, I don't know, Yahoo somewhere. Like, there was fucking no information. And it was so confusing. And it was just, why?
Even to that effect, like, I understand that Aquaman's had his movie. Well, wait, hold on. Did Aquaman come out after Justice League?
Yes, it came out in 2018.
Okay. Like, this was before that movie. So, like, this is our first introduction, arguably, to Aquaman. And there's nothing there. It's just he shows up in this town, and that's... Knowing that that's his introduction when they're having that conversation, he jumps in the water and leaves. I'm like, that's bad. That's so unceremonious and terrible. There's no backstory. We know almost nothing about the Atlanteans. We've never even been to where they are, and this is our first view of them as like it's just. It was bad. Also, I do want to say on the pod, and this is so fun. I don't know, Danny, if you want to leave this in, whatever. Jason Momoa does follow one of my bands on Instagram. Shout out, Jason Momoa.
Which one?
To Baltics.
To Baltics.
I remember when I got the notification on my phone, I was like, what? Aquaman follows my band? That's crazy. But that was cool. And he still does. So if you're listening, book us for your birthday party and pay us thousands of dollars to play. Now, I want to talk about The Flash. For as problematic as Ezra Miller is as a person, I do think that Ezra Miller is a good actor. In this first movie, I was so unimpressed and like fucking bummed out that his character was shit. Like, the context of us meeting him where he's talking to his dad in prison, the lines don't make sense. The reading of it where he's like, oh my God, why would you say that? And I'm like, who are you? We know nothing about, like, this scene is so fucking clunky. And as an introduction is one of the worst scenes. Like, okay, his dad is mad at him, whatever, and then it's just him back at his house, and that's when Batman finds him. Zero context. We know nothing about him, just like we know nothing about any of the other characters. But because of the way that it's edited, it makes him seem like a bad actor. Like, in this first movie, he was not good in it at all.
And it makes his character seem so much more of, like, a dweeb. Right? Like, he's just kind of, he is a sidekick to Batman, right? And he lives in a hacker sequel movie, right? Which I would watch the shit out of. But I mean, I do want to talk about really quick, side note, another interesting choice that was between these two with, like, this is how you know that 2017 Justice League was made for male gaze, because it was so ingrained in even the smallest things. Like, when you go into the Flash's hacker's lair, right? There's a bunch of screens, and there's one screen where there's, like, a female K-pop band that's, like, you know, dancing and doing the thing in skirts and stuff. And I was like, and I remember this because I was like, ooh, who is that? I want to, like, you know, because I like K-pop, right? And so I was like, who is that? Like, what is this? And then in the next one, they're not there.
It's a skull.
It's a skull.
He replaced the screen with like a big blue skull. I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, and that is the smallest thing, but it was like, oh. Like, I know it's a small thing to read into, but with like, because even like Lois in this movie is just fucking like, she is used as, quote, the big guns, right? And she makes herself so small where she goes back to work, but she doesn't write stories or anything because she's so sad. And then she like is the big guns that like is, and she's used by Batman. And I was like, fuck this. Like, the way that women are treated, even in the background of this movie, is fucked.
Well, also on top of that, like, just like every other character, she gets almost nothing. Like, in my head, she had like 3 clunky ass sentences before she's used as like cannon fodder to stop Superman from killing the Justice League. Like, at the beginning, it's like, yeah, I am so sad, and then it's like her waking up in bed, and then it's her at the cop car being like, I'm here, Superman, stop. And I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, I know you're Lois Lane, but like, who are you? You weren't here. You haven't been here. You're not in this movie. Why are you here?
The way that they established grief in this, or like, a sense of loss, was through, again, how superficial this film is. They show grief and loss and the world mourning by, here's the Notre Dame, and here's the Tower Bridge, and here's all of these things, right? That, the world is in mourning and they want a new hero and stuff. Whereas the next one, they show her grieving. They show the world kind of grieving, and the people that meant something to Clark, like, being quiet and being in these small moments, which we'll talk about then. But in this one, it's just like, look, everybody's sad. Like, all right, sad.
Like how we sometimes talk about the idea of like showing and not telling, and I know that that's just like a general, just in making a good movie. I feel like opening this movie with like a found footage of Superman being like, I don't know, kids, save the world, and then it's like 20, like you said, 20 minutes of B-roll of characters being like, oh no, Superman died, for like what we find out is like a 2-year span. But you don't see any of the characters really grieving. You don't really see, I mean, again, you don't see Lois at all. But on top of that, it's, if everyone is so sad about Superman being dead, I mean, nobody's really talking about him until they're like, hey, should we go dig up his body? Maybe. Is that crazy? And it's just bad. Like, this first one is just, it is bad, Jess. It's so bad.
It is. And
it's a clunker.
I'm so, like, part of what makes this movie even more frustrating, like, how much substance there was to this script and to this world building and to these characters, and to how much care was taken with a lot of the shooting of this movie, right? A lot of the pre-production, a lot of like the production. And then like seeing what came out is just like, I don't understand how Joss Whedon, who is awful, can justify all of these choices. Like, I'm like, you took out the entire big bad. Like, Darkseid isn't even in this movie, and he's huge in the next movie, right? And they don't even talk about the anti-life equation. There's so much more substance, and I really, like, one of the reasons why I don't really watch as much film, I do now for this podcast, but I never watched as much film, is because, like, oftentimes it's like things are so rushed, or, how am I supposed to get into the story? I feel like television has been just significantly better over the past like 20 years, right? Probably 30 years, because you have more time to develop a story and a narrative and characters and all of that. And so I'm excited with seeing, after seeing WandaVision, seeing, Falcon and Winter Soldier, then seeing like the Snyder Cut, I was like, superhero films, to do these stories justice and to also be kind to their audiences and to show that they like respect them and think they're intelligent, need to move away from the 2-hour epic and need to do something more. And even like Star Wars also is something like, talking about these big giant universes, right? That like when it gets too big, it's too big for a film. Give it more room to breathe and tell the story the way that it should be told,
Yeah, like the Snyder Cut's good, arguably because it had 4 hours to tell the story. Because again, if the unfortunate circumstance that did happen that pulled Snyder from the movie, if that hadn't happened and in this moment he stayed with this movie, I'm sure it also would have been a big ol' stinker. Like, it probably would not have been good. And for that reason, it's like you don't have enough time to tell the backstories of 5 pivotal, crucial characters on top of developing a bad, on top of developing what you're trying to make as the DCU or what have you, with an ultimate bad of like the bad of a trilogy. You're trying to do, I mean, what he had argued or what he wanted and said he's wanted to do was Justice League 1, 2, and 3, where the ultimate baddie is Darkseid. You have, what's his name, who is Steppenwolf's boss. and then Steppenwolf as the first, right? So you have like the 3, it's set up, that's what's going to happen. But you can't do that in 2 hours. You can't do it well, at least. You can do it. It's possible. But it's not going to be great. It's not going to be that enjoyable. It's going to be a lot of exposition. It's going to be a lot of, wait, why are they there?
Or a lot of relying on you to have already seen the other media, right?
Yeah,
and I feel like film sometimes really does need to be able to like stand alone or be able to like give you the information that you need in order to enjoy the film.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the problems with, not to talk about Star Wars again, but the last Star Wars movie that came out, right, is they did so much outside of that none of it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think that I think that this is just too big for a film.
It's just too much.
There's a lot. Man,
this thing is a stinker. It's not good.
This thing like just reaffirmed everything that I thought and felt about the DC cinematic universe, right?
Yeah, same.
Like, oh yeah, cool. Like I was not surprised. This is exactly what I expect. It feels like an Age of Ultron / Endgame ripoff.
Well,
and
also that was also like, and arguably even in the second one, so boring to me because like
DC and Marvel definitely do that, where it's like, wait, but this is like this guy's like Flash is kind of like Spider-Man. Is like okay, whatever.
You have the Thor, you have the gauntlet with the stones, and it's like now, but these aren't stones, they're boxes, and when you put the boxes together, they create the ultimate power. If you put the stones together, they create it's like very, very linear, very structured. I mean, granted, that's not to dismiss or diminish like some of the nuance and especially a lot of the offshoots of like parallel universes and character development from a lot of writers who do all these cool comics. But at the same time, watching this, I was bored because I'm like, yeah, this feels like the fucking Marvel movie with Thanos and whatever. I know if you're a big comic head, you're probably going to eat me alive for being so cavalier about this. But if you watch the first Justice League, I'm sure you could, to some degree, agree that it is not great, especially by comparison to this new release.
2 years after Superman's death, Bruce Wayne Batman heeds a warning about a looming apocalypse that is to be initiated by Big Baddie Steppenwolf as a way to redeem himself in the eyes of Desaad, his boss daddy who answers to real big bad daddy, Darkseid. Since Darkseid attempted to conquer Earth some millennia ago, he has sent Steppenwolf to do his bidding in attempt number 2. Here we go. So Batman begins assembling the team, Diana Prince as Wonder Woman, Barry Allen as The Flash, Arthur Curry as Aquaman, and Victor Vic Stone as Cyborg. What's this? The Justice League is running out of time, and Steppenwolf has 2 of the mother boxes after brutally murdering swarms of Amazonians and Atlanteans, and now they have to reanimate Superman's corpse so they can for sure defeat Steppenwolf once and for all?
So they reanimate Superman's corpse, but look out. He doesn't remember who he is and is trying to kill the Justice League. JK, Lois Lane arrives and they fly off to Smallville for Superman to heal and collect himself. As Desaad continues pressuring Steppenwolf to complete his task, he finally gets the 3rd mother box and the Unity process begins. Cue the Justice League breaking into the big, bad lair in Radiation City, Russia. They figure out that if Cyborg can hack the mainframe of the Unity, while Flash gives him a big old jolt of lightning, they can stop the process. What's this? They're too late? Nonsense. The Flash runs so fast he turns back time Cher style. Steppenwolf is impaled and decapitated. Yikes. And Darkseid broods from another realm. 3 hours of post-narrative teaser scenes and a horrible Joker cameo later, the Earth is saved. Thank you, Justice League. Snyder Cut, sorry.
The Rob Schneider cut?
The Rob Schneider cut. Oh, my God. I do want to preface before I say anything about this. I know that I've been saying, like, the Snyder cut is good. I do want to put a big, like, hat on that and say, juxtaposed with Justice League 2017, the Snyder cut version is a good movie. It's a far better movie. It's a good movie. Now, if I hadn't seen Justice League 2017 and had only watched this, would I feel the same way? I don't know, because it's still pretty clunky and it's still very big and there's still a lot of moments where I'm like, okay. But compared to the first one, oh my God, this thing's a masterpiece.
At the very, I mean, maybe that's why I like have so, like, I'm just like, wow, really incredible. And it's just because there is like that, like that's what I'm comparing it to. But I think ultimately too, like this movie, I have like a whole list of things that this movie did better, which is most of my notes. But a lot of it has to do with just like the pacing, the character development, the world building, the plot points. Like I wasn't really confused about what was happening or why things were happening, because part of the reason it's 4 hours is because it really took its time to develop not only the characters themselves, but also like the cultures, like, and the people within them, you know? And so like for me, that was great because I love world building.
Yeah, it's also just more concise. Like if we're comparing big like intros to the movies, the first one spent like the 2-minute found footage sequence and then like the 20 minutes of like people crying over Superman. Whereas this movie was very concise. It showed Superman dying from the last movie. We see his death. We see his cry. We see the mother boxes reacting alongside of people being sad.
And then
so
we're
we
like,
know.
Oh,
yes.
That's
so it's
why
cause
those
and
wake
effect.
Up.
Not a word has been spoken, but we're being shown his death is the reason this is happening, and that's why these things are happening, and that's why he's coming. And scene, first line, mother box is opening, we're in the Amazon, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just
and you also get to see like some of that grief too. Like, so it goes through like what his scream or like what his like dying breath did, right? And how like that quite literally rippled throughout the world, right? And so like the Amazonians, holy shit, they're like, oh my God. The Atlanteans, oh my God, this happened. The whole world is like, oh my God. But then it also like centers in on Lois, right? And like one of the things that this film did exceptionally well, I think, is a lot of the sound design and a lot of the score for this. Because the last one was like, you know, it was like a rock and roll, like big giant epic thing. And it was just like really boring. But this one is not afraid to be quiet in the same way that it's not afraid to sit in these moments of and like let the impact of what is happening or like the weight of what these characters are going through, like, or what they're experiencing. It's not afraid to let you sit in that. And so like there's certain moments, like Dave was pointing it out, when the Flash is talking to his dad, right? So they developed that whole thing better because they actually showed the dialogue there. But like it's not like this just kind of like quirky, you know, music or quirky feeling. It's just like this kind of like you can hear like the cell doors and everything opening, closing, people walking around and people doing the thing. And like, you know, there's a little bit of music or like, you know, like background music, which is just very like simple tones most of the time for this stuff. And then when his dad says, forget about me or whatever, everything kind of slowly fades to the background. So it doesn't like, so you don't notice it while you're watching it, but all that does is just pull you into what is being said. And again, the weight of what the dad is saying. So they just did such a good job with that, where it was more cognizant about what it wanted you to feel and how it wanted you to feel in those moments.
Yeah, it felt like the last one it didn't have a direction, and that's why a lot of the scenes felt so clunky. I mean, granted, out of context, like it wasn't given the backing or the platform for these scenes to kind of flourish. But again, it's also that sound design. The sound is very brooding at times. I mean, it's just a good score, and it's good sound design for this movie because it makes you feel something. It guides you through the movie. I mean, I will argue the only sound thing that I hated was any time Wonder Woman was on screen. It'd be like, oh, and it's just like, okay, sure, if we're gonna like at the beginning we're in Amazonia, like cool, like we're setting the scene, sick, but it's literally like every fucking time they cut to her, and I'm like, okay, we get she's a woman. Like I don't know why this is so necessary, because to me at least it took me out of it, and it felt so like, don't forget, she's a woman, which I'm like, yes, and I love that. And I love that this movie portrays her way better than the Whedon one did. But at the same time, it felt counterproductive at a certain point.
To me, it took me out, not necessarily, like, because, like, I get that that's her theme in this film and in, like, you know, all of this. So, like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But, like, her theme doesn't fit with the rest of the Justice League members. So it would go from her and then go from him and then go from, and so, like, you know, everybody else's kind of flowed together, but hers is just, it pulls you out in a way that I don't think the other ones do. And yeah, I don't know. It, like, I get big Xena Warrior Princess vibes from that, which, like, look, I stand. Like, I love.
It's great, yeah.
Yeah.
but that's not the tone you're setting for the rest of the characters. So it does feel kind of outlierish. Like, why are you highlighting her so much? In the same way that in the first one, it's like, I mean, granted, the levels of misogyny are not the same, because in the first one, she's just a sexual object for all the male to gaze at. But in this one, like, at a certain point, I'm like, this feels antithetical to the concept that you're trying to portray for her character. Like, obviously there's strength, obviously there's this like autonomous strength and like bigness that she carries with her wherever she goes, but just that audio track I feel like detracted so much after the third time. And it happens like 30 times. Like, after the third time, just have a nice score in the background. Like, she is good enough. Like, she presents herself and her character presents herself well enough. You don't have to remind us with the audio track. It just felt so rude. It felt rude. It felt messy. And I hated that every single time.
Well, and her character is really the only person in the whole movie that knows what they're doing and knows what they want to do, and is like, I don't think they have that same moment in this where, because Bruce doesn't do the whole like, well, Steve Trevor, blah, 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 like, I'm a sad boy thing, right? He doesn't take that low blow. But in this whole thing, she is confident in who she is. She, she has her morals and she does that. And she, like, if she has a problem, she says, hey, I don't think that's right to bring him back, She knows who she is and what she wants and what she needs to do, and she doesn't shy away from it. It was great to see that, usually in film, the women are the ones that are unsure of themselves or don't know what to do or anything. It's great to see that she was confident in who she was and what she was doing.
Can I talk about The Flash?
Yeah.
Okay. In the first one, I hated Ezra Miller's performance. I thought it was awful. I thought it was so... it was a choice, but to me it was the wrong choice. Now, given the context of this backstory where he's like struggling, he doesn't really have any friends, he's like a little bit off, he's like trying to get this regular job, and he's disheveled, his resume's all fucked up, and then there's this whole car accident scene where like he saves somebody. You see hero action. Like, he's supposed to be this hero. Who is this person?
Incredible.
You see this great scene.
Cool.
I mean, I do have to talk about the hot dogs because why? Like, what the fuck? Like, to me, this was a very like, why did you do that? Like,
and then
I know
he
you're
feeds
trying
the
to
hot dog
be silly
to the dogs.
with that, and that was cute, but it was kind of like, to me, it felt gross because it was like a hot dog by her face, and that's like the whole thing. It's like she's surrounded by wieners. And that's supposed to be like a funny, like, haha, and he like pulls it away. But to me, I'm just like, I mean, like, why are you surrounding this like obvious love interest, this obvious person of interest, this character who I'm assuming at some point if the Flash ever gets something, you're introducing her by sexualizing her in a very silly way. Like, it's not necessary. Like, if there's a moment of sexualization, it's more romance based where like she's obviously interested in him and he's interested in her. We see that. It doesn't have to be exploited in this way where she's literally in a car accident and then he's like, let's just throw a bunch of hot dogs around her. Let's put it right by her mouth. You're like, why? Why that? And then it's like, hey, I'm going to put this in. And it's like, shut up, Zack Snyder. Shut up. Like, fucking move it. Like, it's so stupid. But that being said, that whole sequence, I did love it. I did love how he like pointed his finger into the door and then it shatters and he runs out and it's like he saves her, then he's back with the dogs. Super cute love. And to me, after that scene, next time we see him, then he's going to visit his dad. Then the whole conversation about like, stop trying to help me. He's like, I'm trying to get into criminal law, whatever. Like, that whole scene made so much more sense with his character and his sort of like more like femme mannerisms. He's like a little sassy. He's like a little fluid. Like, that whole choice to me made so much more sense because like we're seeing who he is as a person in the real world, and then it changed the entire context of the scene. I liked it. I also liked Ezra Miller's performance in this way more because, again, given the right context, everything's contextual to that.
And I feel like that also just really set up the end because like in the first one he was just kind of like we talked about, he was just kind of there, and then it's like, oh, we're gonna fight the bad guys, just go help people, go do, like, they don't treat him like he's capable of anything. And in this one, first of all, I love I was just so blown away by that scene because it was so fucking cool to see that this is how fast he moves, and then he just like touches the window and it ripples, and like it almost looked fluid.
Gorge.
And then it like just the way that was shot was just so much more grand and so interesting to me and so fucking cool. And then like the way that played into, you know, like we see him, like that's his base level, right? And then the next level is he runs so fast that he creates the electrical current to do the box thing, right? Like, so to wake up Superman. So cool, that's the next level. And then we see him, like, we already know what he can do. We know what he's capable of. Then we see him turn back time, right? And it is so incredible. He actually, him and Cyborg are the ones that saved the fucking day. And they were nothing in the first film. They were fucking nothing.
Where the fuck is Batman without guns? Nothing. He's nowhere, and he's of no use. Even with guns, he's of no use.
He's barely in this movie, and I loved it.
Yeah, again, because I don't give a shit about Batman, and you're so right. This movie would not have worked. Like, Cyborg and Flash are the ones who saved the day. Aquaman, kinda. Wonder Woman, more so. Batman, who cares? So... Yeah, and that's why, to me, in this, especially with Cyborg's backstory, that's one of the things. And also, just commenting on what I've read as far as, what is the actor's name? Ray Fisher. There were the allegations, obviously, of Ray Fisher talking about abuse of Joss Whedon. That's not a new thing. Joss Whedon is an abusive asshole. He is famously so an abuser. But so much so, I feel like he, in his version, he didn't like him so much, he cut out his whole story. Like, his whole story was just non-existent. And it's so, like, what a fucking petty piece of shit asshole. And I mean, fucking, it's so gross. But in this one, what a cool backstory. It gave so much more weight to his character. There was more of a developed nuance of, like, growth where it's not only grief-based. It's, like, obviously the daddy issue thing, like, I want my dad to be there and he's not there. And then this accident, it's, like, double bad. And he brings him back to life without his consent, which is a whole thing. And he's like, fuck you. I don't know you. You're not my dad. And like the tape player, the tape recording where he's like, and speaking as a father, crush, love, gorge. We're seeing all of these moments of like him dealing with it. And we're like actually seeing him grow. There's a like, this is my life now, but I hate it here and I don't want it anymore. Sort of like depressive mode. Then there's more of a, maybe something good can come here. And then there's an embracing of the power. And then there's a recognition of strength and power. And then it's full-blown superhero. Like, he could do everything by himself, which we didn't get any of that in the first one. It's just, hey, I got in an accident and now I'm a robot. Anyways, should I, like, plug into the cube or what do you guys want to do? You're like, what the fuck?
And also, like, they allow for, like, you know, he is given these powers and we get to see him like learn to control them and learn to use them, where the other one he's like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I don't know, but I guess like, but like in this one he like, you know, his dad is like, you know, as messy as like his choice to, you know, turn his son into a cyborg is, you know, you see him try to do right and try to make up for lost time and all of that. And the way that he does that, like the dad's like redemption arcs can be so bad, but I liked his redemption arc. Like, I was like, oh, okay, like, that's cool. You know?
The fact that he had one, the fact that he was in it, like, he stayed, he, like, remained a character in this movie. And just this idea of, like, I mean, granted, like, the self-sacrificing thing, sure, I feel less good about, like, death by suicide in general in this movie. And I know it's supposed to be this, like, heroic endeavor, like, I have to say this to save the world, but at the same time, I was a little like, well, I mean, we didn't have to do all that. Like, he could have saved another way. Maybe it was therapeutic. I don't know. However, that scene was rough. Him dying, like them showing him die, I was like, ooh, that's a lot for me. But I did like his arc. The fact that he had an arc of any kind. And like the recognition even at the end when he like Cyborg reanimates the tape player that he destroyed, when he's like embracing this man as his father again. It's sort of like a forgiveness moment where he like hears what his dad finally has to say, and it's like, great.
And his dad, like, also, like, lets him be mad and lets him have his anger. And he still checks in on him and he still tries to, you know, be there. But he doesn't force himself into his life in the same way, like, that he did in the last one. Or it felt like he did in the last one, right? And so as we see Cyborg coming to terms with what has happened with him, right? I mean, this whole movie is also about grief, right? Again, everybody's dealing with grief in some form or another. Superman is dealing with the grief of being dead and then coming back and then that whole thing. And Cyborg is dealing with the grief of, like, his mom and his life and what his dad, like, and this whole fucking messy thing. So while he's figuring out who he is, he's figuring out what he can do. And he's using that even, I like that it's set up too, even before he was Cyborg, he was still going out of his way to do good things, right? We see the principal calling his mom in to be like, well, Mrs. your son, and her mom, I love his mom was just like, I'm sorry, that's doctor. I was like, ooh, yes, get that. But, like, we see that the reason that he did what he did was because, like, he was trying to help a student that needed help, right? Like, whereas and he was, like, also kind of a hacker, which is cool because then that played into everything. But he calls out the principal directly for, like, not helping students that need help, but helping those that benefit him and his position in the school as a whole. And I was like, fuck yeah. Well, and then he gives the woman like $100,000 and I'm just like, yes.
And see, that's the thing. I'm like, that's hero behavior. Gorge. This is a movie about heroes. You're literally showing in every face or every facet of the world that's structured to benefit cis white men. In this moment, you're seeing this unjust thing and saying, like, you don't understand the circumstances. You don't want help. You just want to look good. You want to maintain status. You want to maintain structure. Again, you're establishing this hero behavior, love, right? Mm-hmm. It was just better. It was just so much better. Again, getting anything about Cyborg. And to me, this was Cyborg's Justice League, I would argue. Because it was way more centered around him. And even in scenes where, like, when they're breaking into the lab, he's the center of it. Where his dad dies, where they're Steppenwolf's getting the last mother box after they reanimate Superman. Cyborg's kind of in charge. He's kind of leading it. Batman has taken a full backseat to going or doing anything for the most part, which I love. And he's kind of, I mean, he's the one who hatches the plan. He's the one who suggests reanimating Superman. He's the one who knows how to hack the box at the end to save the world. He's the one who does everything. He does everything. And you know what? I do want to say this that I really like. That I don't know if it was, like, intentional. I hope it is, but, like, also, who knows? The way that Superman comes back at the end in the last fight, initially he just shows up and says some quippy line about, like, so in the first one he says, well, I believe in truth, but I'm also a big fan of justice. That's how he, like, shows up back for the fight. But in this one, when Steppenwolf's about to kill Cyborg, again, a black character, Superman, a white character, literally uses his body as a shield.
Yeah.
And gets slammed. And says, not impressed. And that's when the fight, like, goes off and Superman just starts killing him. But just the choice to say, putting Superman's body as a literal shield in front of this black character, I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I didn't even catch that.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, which is great, but also just, like, the line worked. It was way more impressive of him to show up and, like, fucking kick Steppenwolf's ass, like, really hard. Like, it was, like, a really great, well-paced fight scene. I thought that was incredible.
I did too. And I also liked that he wasn't necessarily questioned with what he wanted to do. Like, this movie wasn't like, you can't do that. Oh my gosh. Like, Wonder Woman did say that to him. Like, she was like, oh no, you can't do this. Like, you're going to die. And he's like, look, you're the one that told me to use these gifts. I'm jacking in, girl. Right. Yeah. And I was just like, there's not a lot of drama to that, or it's not over dramatized in the same way where it'd be like, well, I have to do this or the whole world, blah, 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 blah. Just remember me. Like, you know, like, not like it's not drawn out. He's like, no, this is what has to be done. And I'm going to do it. You know, you can't stop me. And he's not doing it because there's anybody that he loves in the world that he wants to save. He's doing it because the right thing to do. And it's because
Yeah.
he knows he's the only one that can. And he doesn't spend any time feeling sorry for himself or questioning himself or what he needs to do. He's just kind of like, cool, this is what I have to do and I'm going to do it. So like in a lot of ways, he's the most heroic person of all of them because he doesn't hesitate. There is nothing holding him back from being who and what he needs to be because he literally at the core of his character is just a good fucking person.
Yeah, which is why, again, I'm so happy that he's in this way more. And I mean, I would 100% watch a Cyborg story. Like, I mean, he is by far and above the best, not only in character, but in decision, in practice. He is it. To me, I'm like, this is the most heroic person in this movie. Love. Given arguably the worst circumstances, right? Like his mom's gone, his dad, like that whole he's put in the worst position with nothing, and then is the most. He's just fucking. He's the coolest character. I like that he was in it more. I still think some of the scenes were a little clunky acting wise, not just with him, but like in general. But I love how his story played into this movie in the way that it was intended. And again, fuck Joss Whedon for cutting all that shit. Like, Jesus. Like,
yeah.
What? You and Ben Affleck just good old buddies? Like, I don't... Why? Why was Batman in there so much? Like, he's so boring.
The original one didn't have the black Superman suit, right? Like, it was just the regular one. And so when he showed up with the black suit, I was like, oh shit, this is new. Like, that's fucking cool, right? And like, again, showing that this is like a rebirth. This is something new. This is a new story for like signifying that change, right? I also liked that the tension for this movie did not come from Bruce and essentially how he is abusive to his friends and to everybody. I liked that it wasn't this whole big like, should we bring him? No, we shouldn't bring him. Blah, 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 right? Like there wasn't that infighting with the team because like in the first one, they didn't seem like a team. They didn't seem like they wanted to work together. They didn't really like, I didn't buy any of that. But in this one, because they didn't have that tension or, you know, that type of dialogue between them, it felt more like a team. It felt more like a choice that they all made together, and they made it for better reasons, you know, and they did things for better reasons. Like all of them getting to the radiation area, right, was just like cool. Like it felt just more like they were working as a unit and they were actually working together and not just out for themselves or not just being assholes to each other.
Yeah, I could not agree with more. In the first one, it felt like this is supposed to be this movie of like the coming together of all good things in the world to defeat all the bad things. And there's like this heroicism that's just supposed to be rampant. Like, again, they're not supposed to be best friends, but like it seemed like they could barely be bothered to be there. And they're like, yeah, I guess. Great. Like, let's go. Oh,
like,
we have to go there
now.
Like, are you sure? Like, fuck, Jesus. But in this one, it felt like there was a general, like, even if we don't know each other very well, we know we have to be here. We want to be here. We want to do this because we're born to do this. Let's go. And you're like, yeah, you're a team. You're a league. I liked it way more. I mean, fuck. What?
I think that was also, you know, because the film goes into like the historical backstory of the first invasion, right, when Darkseid and his minions all failed to perform the Unity on Earth, right?
Yeah.
And all of, you know, the Amazonians, the men, and the Atlanteans, like their histories had told them that they could not fight together, that they couldn't be trusted, and like, you know, so there was all of this, even like historically going back, right?
Yeah.
There was all of this tension between them, and then literally the only way that they could win was just like, yeah, fuck it, let's do this together. And then you know, so like that was also kind of foreshadowing for this team, right? And so it's like, oh cool, yeah, of course they're working together, you know. And like going into those cultures, right, I love that each one, like that they all, like these different groups trusted each other with the boxes, like, right, to just be honored in the way that their culture deemed appropriate, right? So like the Amazons handled it the way that they thought it would be the best, and Atlanteans, like, you know, so like I loved that. And then men just buried it.
Yeah. They just threw it.
So
they just threw it in the
funny.
hole. They're like, we're in the
Let's
woods.
dig a
Nobody's gonna
hole.
find this.
You know, but like also like it's so telling of how these different cultures like what they value and how they deal with problems, right? Men bury their feelings, they bury their problems, they don't want to look at it, they don't want to know that it's there or that it's a problem, right? They have to forget about it or else they're going to want to use it or dwell on it or the whole thing. Women, like the Amazonians, have to be on guard. They bottle it up, but they're like always ready for something to happen, right? They're always on guard, always have all of these fail safes and all of this stuff, right?
And they literally created a place for it.
Exactly. And then Atlanteans, they asked for help from nature or, you know, like they didn't go into the Atlanteans as much as they did the Amazons, which I was like, I don't know. I don't really care about Atlanteans, but I was more invested in Amazons.
They also arguably created a place for it too. Like it's intention. Like there's a structure in place with guarded areas for it to sit in the center. Like they also created a place for it. And again, man, just put it in a hole somewhere in the woods.
I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah. I will say I did like that backstory, that history of like sort of a collective culture coming together to destroy this thing, but then like dismissing each other. And like there's the lore of like, oh well, my people don't like your people and your people don't like my people. I hated the scene when they're in the graveyard and Wonder Woman is talking to Aquaman and it's like, well, my culture says that, well, my culture says the same thing. Too much.
Yeah, that was too on the nose. That
was so silly and bad and on the nose. And I get it. I get like we have more in common than we don't. Like that's the implication. We are all one. We have to come together. Like we're just people. Cool. And I love that. But this was just like also him being like, I also hate my people. I'm like, okay, self-hating person, like fucking calm down. It just,
I mean, his whole character was like protecting white people this whole movie, right? Rather than like, and so it was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know. I don't know how I felt about Aquaman. There wasn't enough of him to feel anything.
Yeah.
But he was just a different version of Batman for me. Like he just has, Batman has wealth and Aquaman has abs.
Yeah, and he can swim. Great. Cool. We love. No, I just that scene when they're talking, I hated it. I like it bothered me so much because it felt like it's supposed to be saying this one thing about unity, but instead it feels like kind of just xenophobic, like casually, like the way that she approaches talking about the Atlanteans. And I know that these are like fake people and fake groups, but the way that she's talking about them is very like, oh, you're just a racist.
Very racist.
Yeah. You're just a piece of shit, Wonder Woman.
I mean,
and
she's
like,
kind of a boomer too. She's like technology.
I will fully say I did not like her in this movie. Her like just obviously she's strong. Obviously I love what she stands for, but the character, I thought she was just an asshole. Like I didn't like her approach in that scene. I was like, you seem really racist and shitty and like, my people are obviously better than your people, so fuck you. And then he's like, well, I don't like my people either. She's like, oh, so we're friends because you hate your own people. Like, I'm like,
also,
ooh, you're gross.
Also weird because, like, I thought that whole, like, history that was shown was like, hey, look, they're all cool now. Hey, they're all friends, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a second. Why is there this racism thing that we have going on? Why is this a thing?
It was trying to just do that, like, see, we came together at one point and we can come together again. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I like that sentiment. And I think it's like, I think that's cool. But then to have this scene where, like, these heroes are just being kind of racist assholes, I was like, well, like, shouldn't they be the example? Like, they're the main character. Shouldn't they be the example for coming together? And I know that scene's supposed to exemplify that. But the way that it's played out, it's like, we share the same common phrase, so I'll be not racist today. Like, ooh, okay, like, shut up. What the fuck, Wonder Woman? Like,
yeah, and I mean, I have no notes for her basically from this movie.
Yeah.
I had like a little bit for her on the last movie. But yeah, like she, you know, in both movies, she's kind of a boomer because she's like, oh, technology, we can't trust technology. And then when that's pit against like Cyborg, right? When you think about the implications of that, that's also messy.
Ooh.
So
I didn't even think about that.
So, I mean, they don't really address it, right? He obviously doesn't, it's not shown that he internalizes that or like picks up on something like that. But by her saying that, she's saying about him, right? And about what he stands for. But I will say, I did love the Amazons. I did love them in this movie. And I loved all of the meticulous planning that they did for this. They built this temple for it, right? Or this lockdown area, and then they always had it under guard, and then there were like the pillars where you see like those women with just fucking so strong, just like with a hammer cutting the thing, and it was just like fucking like, this is so powerful. But like you see, like as soon as it cracks, then the queen comes, right? And they're like, so that whole timeline makes more sense because it allows you to see the planning that they had put into this, and that they were still like, well, the Atlanteans didn't give a shit and were just like, yeah, whatever, it's a thing, and men had just thrown it away, right? The Amazons were fucking ready, right?
Yeah.
And then like the building falling, and like seeing them like actually take out some of these monsters, and like having this be an actual epic battle, and seeing like, having the queen see her sisters like die, and like literally, like, what did they say? They said something to her, just like, just go, just do what you have to do. And you see like the weight that takes on the queen, because she loves all of these people so much. And like she tells all of these women, like as soon as they come in, she's like, show them your fear, right? And they like, bam, like just like so cool. And then like seeing like the whole like temple just fall into the ocean and all this stuff, I was like, fucking yes, here for this. And then like what that did too was that made Darkseid seem more menacing, because you also got to see like the cool shit with his armor and how like it like breaks all those arrows and stuff. And I was just like, cool. And like throughout this whole thing, even though she's battling, and even though this is hard, and even though like her people are dying, like she's still just, she feels it. She doesn't just put it away in these moments, right? She like sees it, she feels it, and she uses that to like, when she's alone on the floor and Steppenwolf is coming, he's trying to be all intimidating, and she's still there ready to fight by her fucking self, because she does what she asks everybody else to do. I loved everything about that.
That whole sequence, the way that they upped it. Because again, I still think that in the first one, the sequence with the horses where they're like throwing the box and they're passing it to keep it away from him, in the first one I was like, this is great. I think this is fantastic. Like, I love the way that this is staged. Mm-hmm. I mean, not her running out of the temple. Her running out of the temple was so clunky and bad in the first one. Like, it was garbage. But as soon as they're running away from him in the plains, I'm like, oh, amazing. And they kept that portion for the second one, but they just plussed it with that whole scene where they're having the battle inside the temple before it then falls off the cliff. The falling off the cliff, gorgeous fake out where he flies up, keep going, fuck, he's really bad. It heightened the stakes so much, so that way when that sequence did happen, it was like, oh yeah, like, fuck. And then he's like, they're strong, but fuck, he might be stronger. This sucks. Like, he's bad. He's really bad.
When you think that, right? Then and it's just the queen with the box, and he takes the box, and she's like ready to fucking like fight him with her dying breath. You see just thousands of Amazonian women pouring off of the mountain, and you're just like, if they were all there, right, they could have stopped this from happening.
Because in the first one, he was trying to imply that also, but it didn't read at all. But in this one,
not at all.
Because of the way that they'd set those stakes, and they'd shown visually, they'd created the strength. By the time you see them coming over the hill, and he was close to losing, he realizes, fuck. Like,
yeah.
And we as a viewer were like, yeah, he could have lost here, like, in this moment, if they were all here. Yeah, so it just made the scene way better. And I think also for this being right at the beginning, how they changed this scene in the first one, I was like, oh, I'm here. Let's go. Like, I'm into this. Like, fuck, they made this scene work really well. Okay, let's make it happen.
Okay, and then they also, like, used the arrow of Artemis to light that fire. And then there was, like, this whole, like, Artemis temple that, like, why would you take that whole scene out where that literally explains the plot and how Diana knows what's happening? Like, to me, that was really great storytelling and really great story building. And then that set the scene for her telling the rest of the Justice League, I keep trying to say Avengers, whoops, the rest of the Justice League, like, what was happening, right? That makes so much more sense.
See, to me, so on a personal note, I thought, like, it was necessary, obviously, for exposition. We need to know why she's the one with the knowledge and why she's telling them. Cool, we know that. Great. It was, to me, when I saw that, I was like, oh, here comes the exposition. It was just, it was a little, it was a little too clunky, but to be fully fair, way, way better than Batman hitting a bug against the wall and then seeing the outline and being like, I think I know what this means. I should go north. And you're like, do you know what this means? Are you sure? What? Like, and that's the thing. One is like over explaining and being like, you need to know these things. Whereas this other one is like, I don't know. And I'm also not confident that you know. Mm-hmm. So this is scene one. I don't think I'm on board yet. Like, you need to give me something more, a little bit.
Yeah, and then like this one, like you said, it did over-explain a little bit, but I liked that I got information. So then I also liked that she used that and went to Bruce and was like, hey, we need to find a team. It wasn't just Bruce in this one. It wasn't just Batman. Fuck Batman, you know? So like I liked that even from that standpoint, it started off as a team rather than like, hey, you want to join my secret club?
Yeah. You know? No, truly. It's we're forming a group now, not like I'm a lone wolf with money and I'm gonna make this happen. Ugh, and it's fucking fuck Batman. Batman sucks. Ben Affleck as Batman sucks. He's so bad. He's so annoying. He was so annoying in this movie. But yes, I do agree. More information, especially in a movie like this, where like you need to know what's happening. Like, whereas the first one, so much is left out, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. What the fuck? I'd rather have this than Ben Affleck in the gooey square. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Also, the fight sequences in this one were way better.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not much of a pro gore, like I need more blood and gore, but like it worked better for me. Like the whole sequence of Steppenwolf getting killed, I was like, this is great. Like, you're showing me exactly how strong you are, this incredibly strong character who was about to destroy the Earth, and then Superman shows up, and they're just, like, throwing him around like a fucking birdie in badminton. Like, boom, yes. Boom, 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 boom. And then it's like his horn gets cut off, and then he gets impaled and thrown, and then she, like, cuts off his head, and you're like, oh, my God, that's crazy. Crazy. It was good. I liked that, and then the head flies through the portal, and Darkseid's like, I'll get you, meddling kids. Like, you haven't seen the last of me, sort of thing.
Even just having Darkseid there, to me, made so much more sense and, like, made me enjoy the movie rather than just going, what the fuck? Like, it seemed cohesive. And also the fact that it was broken up into parts, too. Like, and I know that this is how you watched it. I powered through the whole thing. I did have to stop a couple times because it feels like a long movie.
I mean, it's 4 hours. It's a long movie.
Okay, I did make it through all of the extended versions of Lord of the Rings, so I'm good for 4 hours. But this movie does, like, because while the pacing, like, and the plot and the storyline and everything feel better, it does feel long. And so, like, having it broken up into these different pieces, like, it's like, okay, cool, this is where I can pause and do something, you know?
Yeah, I think for me, just treating it like a miniseries where it's like, okay, each episode's an hour. I can break it into 4. I'm going to watch the first 2 together because I'm enjoying myself. It felt great. I like that it's broken up into parts so you can stop and watch as much as you need to and then go take a break and come back. Like, it feels more like a show. Like, it's built more like a show than a movie. I mean, but that is also to say, like we'd said earlier, yes, this movie is better than the first one. I mean, granted, if this had been 2 hours, it would have been bad. It would have been bad for other reasons.
Yeah.
You know. And with that being said, I mean, do I think it's a good movie by comparison? Oh, it's a great movie by comparison. As a standalone, if I were to watch it again out of the context of having seen the first one so recently beforehand, I don't know if I would say the same thing. Because I'm wondering, like, would all of that information feel incredibly clunky? Because, I mean, obviously after seeing the first one, there was sort of a desperate thirst for information, right? There was this, like, yearning, like, okay, I need something. I need guidance. I need exposition. I need
within the film, anything. Not after the fact. Like, let's be clear. I didn't give a shit after I turned that movie
I didn't
off.
give a shit after the fact. In the moment, during the story, I need more than whatever the fuck is happening here. So then, getting this surplus of information and exposition and backstory and context, it satiated what I was missing from the first one. So that good feeling amplified my viewing of it, right? So if I were to go back and watch it without having just had that, I wonder if this movie would be good. You know what I mean? I don't know. Who knows? I think it did a lot of things right. I would watch a Cyborg standalone. Absolutely. I don't give a shit about Batman. Wonder Woman, fine. Aquaman, whatever. Flash, I'd watch a Flash thing. Sure.
Yeah. I totally agree. I feel like Joss Whedon wanted his cut to be the action sci-fi buddy cop movie comedy thing. Yeah. And Snyder wanted this to be a drama. He wanted this to have weight because, like, I mean, I know I've said it a couple times, but like grief is its own character in this whole thing, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think to me that was really, really interesting. And I thought, like, there's just a lot of my notes were like, this is a much better way to do this. This is so great to do. Like, this is a much better way to do this. Again, like in the context of watching the 2017 release first. And I feel like if anything else, like if you are really interested in wanting to know how drastically editing and score and choices, like how those kinds of plot and narrative choices can affect a film or drastically change something within a film, absolutely watch both of them because that to me is really fascinating. But as just a movie in itself, if we weren't critiquing this, I would just be like, yeah, whatever.
Do you want to talk about the end sequence, the 3 hours of fucking cut or like teaser scenes for the DCU or whatever?
All my notes are in all caps and most of it is what the fuck.
It's so like and maybe as people who aren't super well versed in this general IP, both in comics and just in theatrical releases and all that stuff, they were so fucking silly. Like, I'm so sorry. They were bad and silly and just like, what? Like, first of all, is it Jesse Eisenberg? Lex Luthor, the actor who plays Lex Luthor, hated it. I don't think I saw the last Batman where he was in it the most, but it's just so boring. And then like, what is it? Deathstroke, I think is that character, and it was like, cool, great. Like, I don't care about this. And then the Joker shit where it's like a different universe where they didn't win and Superman's bad, and now it's like this ragtag team of other soldiers,
and
including Deathstroke,
and
it's all because of Lois. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And then it's like the Joker, like fucking fuck him so much.
I feel like that 30 minutes of extra content is what made the film feel way too long for me. I think that should have been like the Lex Luthor thing. Cool. You could have had that as like, you know, the post-credits things, right? Cool. Do that. Yeah. And then that whole alternate timeline thing, you should have released that as like a YouTube video by itself. You know, like as like some sort of a teaser. Like I like it when people come out with like content in between because it's just something that enhances and gets me excited for other things that are coming. And I feel like just tagging it on to the end of this, and maybe it's just because Snyder has said that he's walked away and he's not doing anything else anymore with DC after this. But so maybe he was like trying to shoehorn it in there. But I feel like that would have been better after the fact, or like as a special feature on like the Blu-ray or whatever, right?
No, 100%. I mean, again, they were so disjointed. They did not make sense. They were just teaser trailers for upcoming narratives that he had planned. And again, it's probably because he's stepping away. Obviously, Justice League 2 and 3 are not going to be happening. And that makes sense. But just as standalone pieces of like this universe, I still just like, I couldn't give less of a shit about Deathstroke. I was so mad when the Joker showed up, and like that was like supposed to be a big thing. Because I hate, what is that actor's name?
Jared Leto. I hate Jared Leto.
I hate Jared Leto so much. I also think he is an abusive cult leader because he does have a cult. a 30 Seconds to Mars cult. If you didn't know, it is.
Does he?
He does, yeah.
It's
no. It's supposed to be like a fan club type deal getaway where he like invites all of these fans to this island, and he performs sermons.
That's
30 Seconds to Mars plays
gross.
A little bit, but they like everybody has to wear white. It's fucking weird. It's toxic.
This is disgusting.
Yeah, I'm a little bit ignorant to a lot of the more like to a lot of what they do, but on the surface, from what I've read, it is a cult. It is messy. He sucks. Also, he's this abusive piece of shit. Didn't he, for Suicide Squad, send one of his co-stars a used condom in a box?
Oh, yeah, and like dead animals and shit? Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, method, like, no, you're just an abusive piece of shit. Go fuck yourself. And so, fuck him. I did not want to see him in this. I didn't care about his performance. In my head, he's just doing what Joaquin Phoenix did, but worse. Because like he'd done his whole Joker bit, but in this scene, he's trying to now do a more Heath Ledger approach, and I'm like, pick a lane. Like, you can't abandon the character you made. You're so good, and you're such a great actor. Like, fuck off, Jared Leto.
How many Jokers do we fucking need? Like, how many Jokers in the past like 15 years have like it's got to be at least 4.
But here's the fun thing. Men love it. And so they're gonna keep making them. It's just it's the same idea of like men who don't know how to communicate their issues and don't know how, like, it's just toxic. And men who gravitate towards that idea, it's just like, I mean, you face so little anything in your life because the system is largely made for you, and obviously largely white men, cis white men, and I'm just so misunderstood. You just don't get me, and like the world's fucked up. It's like, I mean, Jesus Christ, I don't even know what to say. I'm rambling, so I'm just gonna move past it. Fuck the Joker.
The level
I hated
of
that
struggle
scene.
that cis white men face is the baseline of struggle that everybody in the world faces.
Yeah, it's
then
too much.
When you like compound that with being a woman or being gay or being,
but that's also
any sort of thing, you know.
That's something too that like I think needs to be addressed more, just in general, like with queerness or queer cis white men, or like even more like gay cis white men. I feel like a lot of them will sort of negate the fact that they are indeed cis white men, and like their queerness or their gayness is like, oh well, not me. It's like, no, sweetie, you're a part of the problem. I mean, in the same way that me, like as a queer cis white man, I have to address those things and understand that like the system is built for somebody who looks like me. I have had more opportunity than so many other people. There's that privilege. There's this thing, and I just, within the queer community or within the gay community specifically, there is a level of complete lack of introspection or a complete lack of acknowledgement of privilege because of the caveat of gay as sort of a misdirect against the understanding that like, no, you're still a cis white person, a cis white man in a patriarchal white supremacy. So chill it back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
I digress. What was I saying? I feel like I'm so rambly right now.
Oh my gosh.
That's the end of the movie, right?
I think that's it. Yeah. I just, what a difference.
I don't even know. Do you have anything else to say about this?
No, I'm good with this.
I'm good with this too.
So we watched Justice League 2017 and then Justice League, the Snyder Cut 2021. The same movie, but couldn't be more different. Eric, what did you think of the first film? Who was it for?
Honestly, I'm going to just say nobody. It's for nobody. It did nobody justice. It did a disservice. I have no quip. It's not a good movie. It's so clunky. It's poorly written, poorly directed. It's not good. It's for nobody. I'm gonna say nobody.
I'm gonna say that it was the film incarnate of the anti-life equation because it was awful.
Exactly.
Did you like it?
No, I did not. Big capital N-O exclamation point. Oh my goodness. Jess, did you like it?
Oh my gosh, no. Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah.
Oh my god, ew. No.
It's going to be a hard pass.
Not even like a no with a heart at the end, just like a
Just
no with not even an exclamation point. Like there's no capitals. It's one of those sentences where everything is just lowercase with a period at the end. No period.
It's a trash film. It's everything. It's everything I expect. Like, oh my god, I don't even. Yeah, it's bad. I don't like it. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Okay, let's flash forward. Get it? See what I did there? Ooh. Okay, anyways,
Bam.
I was going to try to make some pun about, like, the Flash running so fast that he made the first movie not happen. Never mind. I had something and I lost it. But the Snyder Cut, was it new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? How has the story evolved with today's ideals 4 years later?
Yeah, I know, right? So it was new and interesting 100% because it was also, I think the most interesting part is, like we've said this whole time, is like a side-by-side comparison of the same scene with a different context. Different music, different editing, different directing, like, or maybe not even different directing, but like just using the same footage in a different way. I thought it was new and interesting. Yeah, I thought it did what the first one couldn't. I don't think it changed with any ideals necessarily. I think it was largely the same, but just elaborated, like an elaborate version of that thing. I guess a little bit progressive where it wasn't, Wonder Woman wasn't just some sex object. That's nice. That's progress to some degree. Yeah, I guess progressive, kind of.
I think it was new, and I think it was interesting because of the ways that it was the same and different. Because it was the same story, just retold in a better, more thoughtful, more kind way, I guess. But no, so like usually like that's an or in our statements here or our questions, but like it was all three of those. It was new, interesting, and the same, but it was because of the context that we get in this movie because of the 2 extra hours of content. It was all of those things at the same time. I think it was more progressive because Wonder Woman wasn't a sex object. I think progressive also in the way that it showed grief and in the way that it just kind of like let that hang because clearly superhero movies struggle with that. Or DC, the DC...
DCU?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, DCU. DCCU. They've struggled with that, and like in the context of like a normal action superhero kind of thing, whatever, like, you know, it's hard to do that. Endgame did it and did it pretty good, I think, but whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know if it's evolved with today's ideals more than it was just more thoughtful about what it was trying to say.
Agreed. Yeah.
Who do you think this was for?
I mean, it's for DC fans. It's literally for the fandom who clamored this thing into existence on the Reddit, on the subreddits, and the internet at large. The call to action Snyder Cut, release the tapes. It's for the fandom. It's like quite literally, it's for the fandom, I think. Who do you think this was for?
I agree, and I'm also going to add. I'm going to do a yes and here. And it was for Zack Snyder. I mean, like like he had so many plans for Justice League to like be 3 movies, to do this whole thing, you know, and to be in the middle of that and have like just the worst thing that you can imagine happen and have all like your entire life fall around you, like to be able to like literally reclaim that in this sort of way. I think this was absolutely for him making the movie that he wanted to make and maybe being more cognizant about the movie that he wanted to make, and also like knowing that people wanted him to tell that story too. Like, I mean, if I were him and people were just like, we want you to tell your story the way that you want to, like, I'd be like, oh my God, like, you know, and that would be something that would kind of get me through this horrible thing that had happened, and also allow, like, because grief is such a big thing in this film, allow me to process my own grief in multiple ways, you know.
Especially recognizing at the end the usage of grief. Like, I mean, 100%. I liked it. Yeah, and again, I feel like context is like the word of the episode for me. But truly, contextually, in comparison, I liked this movie. But who knows if I would like it on its own as a standalone? Who knows? But yes, in this context, I like this movie. What do you think? Do you like this movie?
I also like this movie, and contextually, I'm going to say it too. Contextually, I like this film. I'm still kind of in shock that I did, and maybe that will all kind of wear off once I, like, you know, just because 2017 was such utter garbage that, like, you know, anything next to that is going to be, like, Oscar worthy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I did like it. Will I watch it again? No, I don't think I need to. But I like that it exists, and I like that it wasn't another pile of trash.
Yeah, I'm happy it exists. I'm happy it's there for people who wanted it. Yeah, and I'm happy that it wasn't shit. Like, it was a well-told story. Cool. On board.
Cool. I think that's it.
Wow, we got through it. I am so impressed. I was so nervous about this episode just in the context of, like, this big... I felt like this was such a big movie to talk about, and we did it. Look at us.
Okay, so when I texted you with the idea of doing this, like, I know that you said, yeah, absolutely. Were you secretly just like, oh my God, no?
I was hesitant because and full transparency, could not have given less of a shit before watching these movies. But to that sake, that's not to say that I'm afraid of new things. And I'm happy that I watched them because, again, even if I think one of them is bad or it's not great or it's not for me, I'm still happy I watched them and was able to, like, acknowledge them to some degree. I still had fun. I had unexpected fun, and I'm happy we did it for the pod, especially knowing that, like, a lot of this IP is really important for a lot of people. And there is a level of me that it was nervous just in general because I'm so far away from this and have no emotional ties to any of these things, characters, or universe. You know what I mean? So for that reason, there was definitely a level I was like, oh my God, what do I have to say about the Snyder Cut? I was like, I wasn't calling for it. That wasn't me. But again, that's not to say that because you don't want it doesn't mean you can't critique it or can't acknowledge it or can't talk about it. So I'm happy we did it.
Anyways, thank you everyone for listening. Please don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help other people find our pod. And yeah, thank you.
Subscribe to our Patreon. We are, first of all, we're so cute and we're so fun and you want more of us. We know that. But we have some cool prizes and stuff. I mean, granted, given the hordes of fans who have already subscribed to our Patreon, you could be next. And with that, we have a whole nother show, a Patreon exclusive podcast called the NOTstalgia Podcast. We kind of break down what we're watching, listening to, thinking about over the week. And it's like, I mean, this show's pretty relaxed, but it's an even more relaxed, just gab conversation about general shit that we tear apart, want to discuss. And it's a good show, and you'll have access to all those episodes when you subscribe, so hit us up.
Or you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and all of those places. Yeah.
Or check us out on the NOTstalgiaNetwork.com.
Oh, hell yeah. We have a website, and it's tight.
We made a network. Check it out. Go check out all our shows. We got a blog. It's so cute. It's a great website. Go spend time on there.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for listening. Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre, editing by Danny Barkley. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess. Always a pleasure. I'm happy we did it, even though it was scary.
I know. And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical. Bye. Bye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit the NOTstalgiaNetwork.com for more.
You enter the dungeon and see the evil wizard pointing his wand directly at you. He says, "Show me a funny and delightful actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast, or I'll consume your souls!" What do?
I take out my phone and find Quest Friends Forever on Spotify.
I show him how to find Quest Friends Forever on Apple Podcasts.
I share the Quest Friends Forever Instagram and YouTube pages with him.
And you all get critical hits!
Yay!
Quest Friends Forever is an actual play podcast starring 4 friends with varying levels of Dungeons & Dragons experience. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday as we embark on fantasy adventures, play fast and loose with the rules, and laugh at each other's shenanigans. No prior D&D knowledge is required to listen, so everyone can feel free to join the fun. Quest Friends 4, that's the number 4, like how there's 4 of us, ever. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Quest Friends Forever.